Ever wonder why adulting became a viral meme, but its true origins are often overlooked? Long before millennials coined the term, there was a generation silently mastering life's responsibilities, without the online fanfare. We're diving deep into how Gen X, forged by unique economic and societal pressures, truly invented the art of adulting, laying the groundwork for a concept they never even named. To understand why Gen X are the unsung pioneers of this phenomenon, you have to look back at the world they were born into. We're talking about a generation that grew up in the shadow of the boomers' massive cultural footprint and just before the digital explosion of the millennials. Often called the Latchkey kids, Gen X was the first generation to experience the mass entry of women into the workforce and the skyrocketing rates of divorce. For many Gen Xers, the school bell didn't mean a ride home and a snack waiting on the table. It meant a walk home to an empty house, a key around the neck, and the immediate responsibility of managing their own time, hunger, and safety. This wasn't just a quirk of the 70s and 80s, it was a fundamental shift in how childhood functioned. While adulting today is often framed as a choice or a humorous struggle to perform basic tasks like doing taxes or cooking a meal, for Gen X, these weren't choices. They were survival skills. When you're 10 years old and you're responsible for making sure your younger sibling gets their homework done and that the frozen dinner is in the oven before your parents get home from their second jobs, you aren't adulting for the gram. You are simply functioning in a world that demanded you grow up faster than any generation before you. This early independence created a psychological blueprint of pragmatic cynicism. Gen X looked at the institutions that were supposed to protect them, the government, the corporate world, the traditional nuclear family, and saw them fracturing. They watched the Watergate scandal, the Challenger disaster, and the Cold War's constant threat of nuclear annihilation play out on their living room television sets. They didn't have the luxury of idealism. Instead, they developed a do-it-yourself or DIY ethos that would eventually define their approach to everything from music and art to career and home life. When we talk about the economic realities that burden Gen X, we have to talk about the shift from a manufacturing economy to a service and tech-based one. They entered the workforce during a time of massive corporate downsizing and the death of the job for life. Unlike their parents, they knew that loyalty to a company wouldn't necessarily be returned. This forced them to become the ultimate freelancers of life. They had to navigate a world where the old maps didn't work anymore. They were the ones who had to figure out how to build a 401k because pensions were disappearing. They had to figure out how to market themselves in an increasingly competitive landscape without the benefit of social media platforms to amplify their voices. Think about the sheer logistical grit it took to navigate early adulthood in the 90s. There was no Google Maps to help you find your way to a job interview in a city you didn't know. You had to fold and unfold a giant paper map while driving. There were no YouTube tutorials for how to fix a leaky faucet or change your oil. You either had a manual, a neighbor, or you just tried things until they worked. This figuring it out phase is the literal DNA of what we now call adulting. But for Gen X, there was no reward for it. There were no participation trophies for managing your own bills or successfully navigating a bureaucratic nightmare. You just did it because that was the expectation. Culturally, Gen X was often labeled as the slacker generation. This is one of the great historical ironies. While pop culture icons like the characters in Reality Bites or The Breakfast Club projected an aura of disaffected boredom, the reality was that Gen X was working harder than almost anyone realized just to keep their heads above water. The slacker label was a defense mechanism, a way to mask the anxiety of being the first generation predicted to do worse financially than their parents. If you act like you don't care about the rat race, it hurts less when the rat race ignores you. But beneath that cool, detached exterior, Gen X was busy reinventing the workplace. They were the ones who pushed for more flexible hours and a better work-life balance, not because they were lazy, but because they had grown up seeing the toll that the organization man lifestyle took on their parents. They wanted a life that felt authentic. They didn't want to be cogs in a machine. This drive for authenticity is actually at the heart of the adulting movement. To adult is to consciously acknowledge the weight of responsibility while trying to maintain a sense of self. Gen X pioneered this by refusing to let their jobs define their entire identities. As Gen X moved into their 30s and 40s, the stakes of their adulting only increased. They became the sandwich generation, caught between the needs of their aging boomer parents and their own children. This is where the pragmatic, cynical resilience they forged in their youth really came into play. They are the ones navigating the complexities of the modern healthcare system for their parents while simultaneously trying to guide their kids through a digital landscape they themselves had to learn as adults. They are the bridge between the analog and the digital, the old world and the new. So, when we see a meme today about how hard it is to make a doctor's appointment or how exciting it is to buy a new vacuum cleaner, it's important to remember that Gen X was doing this without the digital tools and the communal validation we have now. They did it in the quiet, in the spaces between their jobs and their family responsibilities. They didn't call it adulting, they just called it Tuesday. The irony is that Gen X's success at being self-reliant is exactly why they are so often forgotten in the conversation. They don't scream for attention. They don't demand a gold star for doing their taxes. They have a deep-seated suspicion of performative maturity. For them, the reward of being a functional adult is simply the freedom that comes with it, the ability to take care of yourself and your own so you don't have to rely on systems that might fail you. In many ways, the Millennial and Gen Z embrace of adulting as a concept is a testament to the world Gen X helped build. Gen X opened up the conversation about the mental load of daily life. They were the ones who started questioning why we have to work 60 hours a week just to feel successful. They were the ones who made it okay to be a little bit cynical about the traditional markers of adulthood, like the white picket fence or the corner office. By being the first generation to struggle openly, even if that struggle was mostly internal or expressed through grunge music and indie films, they paved the way for the more vocal, communal processing of adulthood that we see today. Ultimately, Gen X invented adulting because they had no other choice. They were handed a world that was rapidly changing, a set of rules that no longer applied, and a sense of isolation that forced them to become their own parents. They are the master navigators of the mundane, the experts of the UN glamorous, and the quiet architects of the modern life balance struggle. They may not have given it a hashtag, but they certainly lived it, one microwave meal and one DIY repair at a time. As we look at the shifting economic realities of 2026 and beyond, that Gen X pragmatism is more valuable than ever. The ability to look at a chaotic world and say, okay, how do I fix this myself? Is the ultimate adult skill. It's not about being perfect, it's about being functional in a world that often feels anything but. So, the next time you see someone jokingly complaining about the rigors of adulting, take a moment to tip your hat to the generation that did it first, did it silently, and did it without ever needing a like to feel validated. Links to recommended self-help books in the description, and if you like this content, drop a comment and subscribe.